What is up, y'all? Welcome in to the CFB Expert Show. Adam Kramer and Paige Mendonca here from the No Punts Allowed podcast. We got the first round of the college football playoff. Kramer, how would you rate this first round? I know we've only had one other 12-team version, but give us your thoughts.
Well, we had two good games, right?
Yeah.
Two very interesting games, then maybe two not so good, right? And we sort of expected that based on point spreads and other things. It was okay. Like we need to change this format. We could just put that out. I don't want to be negative out of the gate. We all kind of know that the format needs to change, but I thought the games were good, were really compelling, and I think we learned a lot for sure. So it's like a solid 6. Is that a fair ranking to begin? If you're
Yeah.
number to it, like a 6?
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. Like you said, some were great games, some were not, and that's all right. And we knew sort of going into this, we weren't going to get maybe the level of play and as close of a situation as we wanted to. But of course, that is a larger conversation that we will talk about. The college football playoff will change. That is something I do want to say is like, at the end of the day, this is probably the best case scenario for the playoff this year because it is going to change next year. January 23rd is the date that they will be making the decision on next year's playoff. And Kramer, I'm going to guess that there is some change around group of 6, group of 5, getting those teams in and automatic qualifiers. So I will say, I think it is one of those things we will see some change. Maybe it wasn't the best, but also round 2, I'm ready. I don't know if you're looking at these matchups and excited, but I am. We are going to take a look at our brackets that we did last time and sort of make some predictions going forward based on the bracket. Not to brag, but I did predict this.
I was waiting for this.
I'm sorry. It's because you got to give yourself the wins when you get them, okay?
Ahead. Yeah.
And I predicted the first round correctly. I feel like it wasn't that difficult to do, but let's see if I continue to be on a heater and we'll go through and make those other predictions. So Alabama, Indiana, and we will talk a little bit more about Alabama and if maybe that game, if they got any juice off of that for like a comeback. And there's all this conversation around their coach. I'm gonna have to say I don't think that that's gonna be the case, and I end up having Indiana win this game. I don't think Alabama's gonna end up being a team that's gonna ruin the whole bracket. Texas Tech and Oregon. I will give Oregon props for just, winning that game, but I think there's some concerns a little bit. Not huge ones. Obviously, they played JMU. Obviously, there were second stringers in, all of those things. However, some stuff that maybe they need to clean up. I'm going to roll with Texas Tech in that. And then Georgia Ole Miss, I think Ole Miss, while exciting, and I know Lane was happy that they won, I think moving forward, it's going to be Georgia. And then, of course, I picked Ohio State to move forward. In my national championship, I do have Indiana and Georgia. And my national championship winner still is Indiana. Now, obviously, this will change as this goes on, but I still have all the faith in the world in Indiana.
It's a really interesting second round. You're right. We're going to get the
good games.
Good games. So we are a little bit different. I like your bracket, and to be clear, you were...
It's a bit chalky.
It is. Mine's even chalkier to a degree, and then it gets less chalky. But I like what you're doing here. I'll start at the top. Little old Alabama. Underdog Alabama against Indiana is still weird to me, but I guess we have to get used to it. And It will be interesting to see what Alabama can do, considering it needed another 30 minutes to figure it out against Oklahoma, but it did. I think Indiana is still too much. Oregon Texas Tech is one of the more difficult games to handicap that I've had all year. Yep. Really, really challenging. I know Oregon defensively didn't play great. Motivation. You mentioned the depth chart, all these different things. Got to be a part of it. But we both like Texas Tech. Are we looking over Ole Miss? Maybe a little bit. Injury is a factor as well. It was not it was a great score game for Ole Miss, but certainly we have to see in terms of health there what's going to happen. I'd probably like Georgia either way. I think Miami is going to have to lean on Carson Beck, obviously more than it did. I like Ohio State in that game. I have Ohio State over Georgia, which is going to be a fantastic football game if that's where we land up. It's probably close to a pick-em game, right, in terms of point spread. I've got Indiana there. We got a rematch of our Big Ten championship game, and I think it goes differently. I think Ohio State wins it all, wins their second consecutive title in a row. I think the loss to Indiana, great experience for Julian Sand. We're finding out a little bit about Jeremiah Smith's health. I think a little time off, hopefully going to be good for that quad. It would be a great football game between two really, really talented teams and two teams that obviously have a ton of balance as well.
Yeah, the chat not loving that we don't have Oregon going further.
Well, it's a struggle, right? Like this is an Oregon team offensively was incredible. So
Yeah.
I don't necessarily like disagree. I am back and forth on that football game. These were our picks, by the way, from before the playoffs started. We're sticking to them. Oregon's favored in this game. Like
Yeah.
they're 1.5 point favorite right now. So,
Yeah.
I get
By
it.
the way, someone in the comments did say that Lanning is going to have it cleaned up against Texas Tech. I will say this, it could work to their benefit. We have seen the video footage of Dan Lanning being quite the motivator, and we both are big fans of his and know that he can motivate this team to not have a situation that they had last season in the college football playoff. And I think he's very aware of that in the sense that after that game, he was pretty critical and was like, hey, we needed to finish that game better. And I think that's very much top of mind for him and priority for him as a coach. So I could definitely, that one was probably the hardest game for me to pick, but I watched all year how complete of a team Texas Tech is. And that's going to be a really fun game to watch, which again, if you're complaining about first round games not being great, this second round is going to be even better. But I do want to talk about Alabama a bit more because I think let's start with the fact that there was a lot of rumors about DeBoer and Michigan. We don't want to just skate over that. That was, something that was out there and people were like, okay, if he loses this game, could it be a real conversation if he leaves? They weren't really giving him a lot of credit for being able to compete in this game and getting his team ready for this, especially after watching in the SEC championship. Do you think that this Alabama team, we learned a lot about them from that game? Or do you think it was just, hey, yes, they had that comeback, but this doesn't mean that this Alabama team is fully good to go and running on all cylinders and back to being the powerhouse we know and love?
Yeah, I think we have to be careful, right? No, Notre Dame fans don't want to hear this discussion
Yeah.
either. Oklahoma did its part to give Alabama the game, but Alabama had tremendous resolve. Down 17-0. You and I talked about it this week. That's a gut check moment for Caleb DeBoer and this team to kind of find a way, get some points on the board. They did. Offensive line started to play a little bit better, which had been so bad in the SEC championship game. In the early part of this game, the Oklahoma defense is absolutely legit.
Yeah.
But the problem is we're going to overreact and we're going to take 30-minute sample sizes and declare a team worthy or not. It's an Alabama team with a ton of talent. I don't know what happened to Ryan Williams, by the way. This was a text thread all week. But Alabama has found other weapons, and Ty Simpson has found a way. The running game not working still feels a little bit odd. It is a team that needed to respond, probably needed a few breaks along the way, and got them. And that to me was the story of that game.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that we talked about before this game happened was, especially because of the fact that obviously Oklahoma had beaten Alabama already, one of the things they struggled with was adjusting to Venables' pressure on Ty Simpson and being able to get that offense going. And I do think this was the first time we've seen them sort of adjust in the last 2 years to sort of get their quarterback in a position where they could win the game and put themselves in a position where they could win the game and change things and try new things. And so I was impressed with that and think that will carry them a bit forward. Also leaning on your depth. You're Alabama. The depth is there for sure. So I think it definitely showed. And curious though, how you think that matches up now in the granddaddy of them all in the Rose Bowl versus this Indiana team. Do you think it's just because the logo is giving everyone a little bit pause here? I don't think this game is going to be, if I had to look at all of the games that are going to be played, I guess Miami, Ohio State, I would say is not going to be that closest, but next to that, I would say Indiana and Alabama are probably not going to be as close.
Well, no, I think it could be close. It's Alabama. Indiana has been better. So as odd as it is to look at, I think Alabama can absolutely make this game competitive. I don't know how they're going to run the football though. Right?
Yeah.
That's the struggle. And I don't know if Alabama is even going to try, because it seems like when things aren't going well, they just kind of say, well, we're going to figure it out. I think we learned a lot about the depth. You use that word at wide receiver. And I think we learned a lot about Simpson as well in this game. So now Indiana offensively has overwhelmed lesser opponents, right? But in Ohio State, it was a bit more of a meat grinder game. The Alabama defense, I thought, played really well. That it feels like we'll have a little bit of a lower scoring game here, but Alabama has to play better. Beating Oklahoma back to the point, what do we think of Alabama? That was a flawed football game. And if you stumble out of the gate like they have, It's not going to go very well. So while they could be competitive, they got to find a way to start faster than they have. Otherwise, it's going to be curtains.
Kramer, a question in the chat that I know you love. Someone would like to know if Indiana is going to cover versus Alabama.
I we I love these types of questions. I would say no. I think Alabama's going to put up a fight. I think Alabama's going to put up
Okay.
a fight. We've seen Mendoza as well struggle a little bit, at least early on, against really good teams and good defenses. Now, Alabama is not Ohio State. I don't know Alabama defensively where they stack up in terms of competition, even Oregon. I think it's going to be competitive, but I think Indiana is going to win. I think they're better. I think the wide receivers are a matchup issue for anybody, including Alabama. I think, again, they've had some injuries on defense, Indiana has. So we'll see what happens. But, and a little rest, too. Now, this is the interesting part of this page. Like we do this with the MLB playoffs, we do it with college football. Having a bye, what does it mean for you?
Yeah.
Um, Time will tell, and we're going to overreact to whatever it means. But a little time off for a team that won the Big Ten championship, I imagine, is not bad. Does that equate to rust? What does it mean for momentum? Either way, we're going to overreact to however this goes.
Yes. Now let's take a look at this bracket and maybe look at what happened in the first round and if there are teams, and also evaluate some of those games and those teams. Is there a team that you could see causing chaos? I think Miami is the first team that people will probably look to in terms of a team that not a lot of people thought were going to make it out of the first round and certainly are not expecting to win this next round. Is there a possibility for them to cause chaos in this?
So I would look, because I think Oregon and Texas Tech are pretty evenly matched, according to the odds makers.
Mm-hmm.
And now one of those teams winning the national championship is maybe outside expectation. Oregon fans are saying, no, like we're going to do this.
Yeah, the chat is very much like on board with Oregon winning the whole thing here.
And that wouldn't shock me either.
Yeah,
now,
exactly.
The two teams, and maybe it's disrespected to Miami, but I look at Ole Miss and I look at Alabama as the teams that are like right within range, under a touchdown point spread right now. Again, Ole Miss injury-wise, we'll see. Hey, they were competitive and beating Georgia for a while. And maybe we just kind of discarded them because of everything that happened with Lane. Well, the good news is, I mean, again, sample size is small and against a team that it should clobber and has clobbered already or did previously. They looked really good. So if your quarterback is healthy and your weapons are ready, like, hey, we've seen Ole Miss do this before. And then Alabama, we talked about, right? Indiana off a bye. Maybe Alabama has figured all of it out. We're going to have to see more. Those are the two spots. Do you think, I mean, Miami clearly has a shot. Miami's really good, especially on the line of scrimmage. And I think this is the game you have to be really good at the line of scrimmage. But do you give them, like, what level of shot do you give Miami against Ohio State?
Not a great one. I just think that, to your point, I think it's just like consistency. We talked about this actually on our podcast. We talked about like Texas A&M and Miami in terms of consistency were two of the most difficult teams to pay. Like there was just no knowing what version of those teams you were going to get in this game. And that's why I chose Miami in that, because I knew there were some inconsistencies. But when their ceiling is great, but I think even Miami's ceiling, they'd have to play a perfect game to beat Ohio State. And I don't know that they have that in them.
Carson Beck, right? Carson Beck's going to have to do more. And I'm going to give, I mean, both quarterbacks a little bit of a pass here. The conditions were awful.
Yeah.
The game, the play calling.
All right.
Well, the play calling was also unusual, but then you look at the win, you kind of understood it. And Miami had a running back that was going absolutely nuts. So, like, I'm going to, like, say that the flow of the game kind of dictated that. Carson Beck, though, has to be, this is a future number 1 overall pick, Carson Beck. Like, he has to be a guy that we've seen him be.
Yes.
In
it's
this
possible.
game, I think, but that's the only way that this happens, because Miami is not going to run the ball like they did. And they have to find, I know they were trying creative ways to get Tony in space. I actually love what they did, like special teams, running. It wasn't always working, but you're going to have to go back to the drawing board and say, all right, we have to get this dude the ball in his hands at no matter the cost. And we're going to ride him and back in all. And then your line of scrimmage, right? Back to that. They're good there. This good on good. Like, they can hold up there for a while. It's just, can they make enough plays offensively to stick with them?
Yeah. In the chat, someone said Indiana's only played Ohio State and Ohio State's only played Indiana. Not true. Indiana has played Oregon. So we don't know any about either of those teams. All right. And Iowa.
Sorry.
But in terms of playoff teams, I mean, I would say I think we could say Indiana is definitely more battle tested than Ohio State. In certain ways, just simply
Yes.
with the Oregon game. But I think it's a fair assessment to say they haven't played anybody. But how has that worked out for the Big Ten the last couple of years, Kramer? Has that stopped them from winning national championships? I
No,
can't even think about that.
no, 100%. Ohio State knows the drill, right? And granted, they didn't have a bye last year, so
Yeah.
it's different. The timing is different. And I'll look at that Penn State game for Indiana. I know that's a lesser opponent. You and I were joking about Penn State and Clemson playing in a bowl that we thought was going to be the national championship, but
The underachieving bowl.
that
Yeah.
game, you had to dig deep
Yeah.
and find it, and they dug as deep as you can, and arguably one of the greatest finishes of the year. So, no, they've been tested. A lot of these teams have been tested, which is good. You need that. You want that.
Yeah. Someone in the chat is calling their shot against us. Miami and Alabama will win their games. Bama has a solid chance against Indiana. Rather play Indiana than Georgia.
You know what? These games have been very chalky. I would love for them not to be chalky, even if it means we're wrong. Like the sport could benefit in the era of NIL, in the era of cash, in the era where everybody has a shot of some weirdness. So again, you look at Ole Miss, like we saw them play Georgia, and you could argue they should have won that game. Miami
Yeah.
has beaten Notre Dame and lost a couple of games that maybe they shouldn't, but was uber competitive otherwise. So I don't think those are radical. I would be surprised if Miami won, and I'm just going off point spreads alone. But no, these are really, really talented teams with NFL players all over the place.
Absolutely. Someone also said, how come we don't think Oregon has enough to get it done? We do. They were just dealing with injuries during a good stretch of the end of the season, so I'm glad they are getting healthy. We both think they are perfectly capable of winning a
Oh
national
yeah,
championship. It just probably a little bit of residual from last season, and the team that they did have in those things. So
Evan Stewart, by the way, is like the fact that we may get to see him
that would be wild.
is amazing. He is such a talented kid. That was one that started to pop up in the last few weeks. Oh my gosh, like arguably one of their best offensive players. You throw him into the mix, even in a limited capacity, and defensive coordinator is not going to like that. That changes a lot. So
Yeah.
they are getting healthy at the right time.
All right, we are going to move to some CFP winners and losers from this first round. And I love this segment because we get to have a little bit of fun and talk about some of the not so serious parts of this, but yes, some of course serious. And a job that should be taken very, very seriously is that of the College Football Playoff Committee. We know that they are a bit of a joke currently right now, a little bit, but I'm giving them their flowers for putting Miami in because Miami got that win. And I feel like if you're on the committee, you're like, whoo, thank goodness they got this win. All right. The next is Kalen DeBoer. There were fans ready for him they heard the Michigan rumor and Alabama fans were like, you know what? Maybe if he loses this, maybe we get rid of him. Maybe we move on. It is a very tough place to coach. It is hard to follow Nick Saban. All of the above. This was a big win, especially a comeback win. I feel like they needed this to shake up the rest. And if they are going to do get a big playoff run, it needed to be a win like that, not a big win and where they feel like uber confident. It was, hey, they really had to earn it. So I'm giving Kalen DeBoer props. And then, of course, our guy Lane Kiffin, who sat at home and did not coach a college football playoff game, but is receiving a $250,000 bonus for that win from LSU because when LSU took over, when obviously brought him over, they took over some of his incentives for the college football playoff this year with Ole Miss. So he has the opportunity to make $1 million if they make the national championship just by sitting at home, just by assembling a team, putting them through the regular season and this. So those are my three winners. Lane Kiffin, I mean, it's a college football tradition to be able to get paid for not coaching. And I think that Lane Kiffin is really benefiting from that. One of my losers, I'm sorry to say, college football kickers, while I love you dearly, the weather, whether it was Oklahoma, Alabama, or Miami, Texas A&M, some of the best kickers that we have seen all year long missed. We had, I mean, legitimately so many field goals missed, and I know it breaks everyone's heart, but it also kept the games interesting. But I will say, I'm so sorry, college football kickers. I hope that this next round is good to you. I hope we don't get any doinks, maybe at the stroke of midnight for teams to lose in a quarterfinal. Not saying that that's happened before,
Oh
but
my,
maybe we've seen it before.
cursing it.
I know, right? Cursing it now. But I will say I did feel for college football kickers, and I'm sorry to give you the loser the monogram there, but it's really not because I feel that way. It's just because of this weekend was brutal. And next up I have Oregon's killer instinct. This is in quotes because this is legitimately what Dan Lanning said on the TNT show afterwards when our friend Adam Lefko said, you didn't seem totally thrilled about this. And he said, yeah, no, I wasn't really thrilled with how we finished that game. And I think, again, I said this earlier, this is for him. All he knows is that game last year, and he does not want that to be the case again, and wants to prove that this team deserves to be there. He obviously wants to win, and I think if I am an Oregon player, I imagine there were some words had after about that, and maybe hopefully that sets him up for a big win in this next round. And then we've got Oklahoma's playoff record. 0-5 in the playoff overall. Now, not all entirely on Brett Venables in this group, but just for Oklahoma as a whole, that hurts.
Woof.
That hurts. That's tough. Like I said, it's not all Brett Venables' fault. This has gone over 2 other coaching staffs, but still for Oklahoma as a brand, a little brutal. And Kramer, you and I had this discussion a little bit earlier when we were recording our podcast. What's the meter for Oklahoma in terms of like how you feel about him as a coach? Of course, you get to the college football playoff. That's what you want. You had that expectation every year with Lincoln Riley. You expected to lose because, again, that's what they did in the college football playoff. It was like, win a playoff game, please. Is this not great news for him? I mean, I feel like he saved himself completely this year, but it already in one loss could maybe set you back.
Oh, don't worry. I will get to that. Spoiler alert. I have more for you and Oklahoma fans or Oklahoma haters when it comes to that. Let's start with the positive first. Dante Moore, I know he had a couple of turnovers, Paige, but this to me looks like the best quarterback in college football from a draft standpoint. I'm a Jets fan, okay, so I'm watching this and I'm hopeful. I'm saying you need to go. And I'm in awe watching him throw the football. So even with the turnovers, even with the killer instinct defensively, I thought he put on an absolute show with a few blemishes in between. I'm just such a fan of his talent, and I love just the progression he's had. He's young, and he's only going to get better. Miami, right? Oh, well, first, let's dig into look at this again.
Look at this. Does the guy have a pulse? Like he just is so. Oh my gosh.
Look at the completion percentage. Again, 2 turnovers. There were some freak plays in there. They needed all of that, by the way, because JMU just kind of kept scoring. Yeah. So yes, are they a little selfish? Me wanting him on my NFL team of choice? Maybe. But I think he's great. Let's talk Mark Fletcher. We talk Tony. We talk Carson Beck. We talk all of the pieces that Miami has. This is a guy that's played well. In fact, when you look at Florida and South Florida, like games where Miami has performed well, the constant has been this guy running the football for them. And if you watch that game, you could see that there was going to be room in the middle, that Miami's offensive line was going to find a way. And they needed him. Like this was the MVP. This was just a tremendous performance. It's a guy that improved his overall stock. And I think really outside of the defense, which was tremendous, carried him and the team to the next round.
Yeah, for Miami fans, a note, he did, I think, say that he was coming back to Miami.
He's a stud, and I think we're changed the whole profile nationally. I think Miami fans know exactly who he is, but that's going to look different now. Last is us. We can rip the committee. We can rip the format. This second round of games, I think, is just loaded with intrigue. Bama as an underdog, Ole Miss without its former coach trying to pave its way, Ohio State, Indiana staying alive, Oregon, Texas Tech is one of the games of the year. I love this round of football games for us that we get as fans. We're going to agree, disagree on who's going to win, which is good. That means we've got great games to pick from. Now, that being said, this is a bad Group 5, Group 6. James Madison had some fight offensively. Tulane did not. You and I have been we've defended these teams' inclusion in the playoff. We've wanted a path for the Boise States of the world who deserved it last year to be in. I think at a time when the format is under scrutiny and under the microscope, this is probably going to change the way we grant access to these teams moving forward because there have been blowouts in games of magnitude. I want them to be in if they earn it. Obviously, we're going to have better parameters when they do, right?
Yes.
Like that's got to happen. Marcel Reed, I have been, this was a team I picked and bet on to win the SEC before the season began. I'm a huge fan of his talent. The conditions were not great. I think he can be better. This was a rough performance for him, and I picked Texas A&M. It never looked quite right offensively. And when you look at A&M, he's capable of this. Page, you and I talked about it
Yeah.
against Notre Dame, against South Carolina, right? This was a bad day. Doesn't mean he can't be exceptional. It just wasn't coming together. Even legs, kind of in the second half, it just looked all out of sync. And I don't think the play calling helped him out either. There will be better days for Marcel Reed, who is a tremendous player, but this was a bad one. And Brent Venables, look, we're not going to dig in. And I want to start with a little praise. They had a brutal
Yes.
schedule. So getting in the playoff was a huge deal for Venables. Kudos, right? Before the season began, we said there was no way. When we did our live show in the middle of the season, I said there was no way. They got in. Exceptional. You're up 17-0 in a game like this. And to see it fall apart the way it did, it is tough. And we started, you and I, to look at the schedule for next year, which is no picnic. Includes a road game to Michigan. Who knows what that looks like? But it also includes, games at Georgia. I think this is a tough one because this was attainable and one I think that could buy him a lot of good graces when it comes to his tenure there. And obviously just made the playoff. Kudos. That's a tough one you want back up 17-0 with basically just a half of football to play.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's look at some of this off-season stuff that is going on, even though we are in the midst of playoff. Shout out the college football playoff or calendar. Transfer portal. So we did the show last week, and there have been a number of quarterbacks that have hopped into the portal since then. We have also heard that the going rate for a year of play, now paying for play,
Yeah.
is about $5 million for some of these top quarterbacks. That's the Lagways, the Brendan Sorsbys, the all kinds. Josh Hoover, another guy going in.
Yep.
Rocco Becht is now there. Is there anyone in particular or teams that you feel like we should be paying attention to with some of the movement over the last week?
I think the one that jumps off to me actually happened. We learned about today. Byron Brown from USF, who was exceptional for South Florida. 1,000 yards rushing, 3,000 yards passing. Auburn, look, let's just connect the dots here, Paige. Auburn has really struggled at that position in particular. Hugh Freeze was not shy saying Jackson Arnold cost him his job. I don't know if I would have said that, but whatever, he said it. This feels like the perfect fit, and it's the obvious one because his coach is already there. He plays tough. And I think they need someone with an attitude like this because he's looking for contact, can do it, in a magnitude of ways. I think Auburn at long last could really solve their problem, at least for a year. And I'd be shocked if they didn't get it done. And I'm curious, I'll ask you, we've got Penn State, we've got Matt Campbell, we've got Rocco Becht at Iowa State. Isn't it the same thing, right? Like
Yeah.
it feels like too good of an opportunity not
To
to
pass
connect
up.
these two.
Yeah. Well, and I think to your point, like if there is a year of eligibility, a year of stability, and even if it doesn't go, perfectly, you still have a little bit of a grace period in terms of getting those quarterbacks in. I would say Lane Kiffin probably least so because the LSU expectation is you're competing for a national championship next year. I don't think they give him any leeway on the quarterback that he chooses because also I think he's the main factor in this. Where who he chooses to be his quarterback will sort of have a domino effect throughout this market. And I think the other part of this is a lot of teams that have are still playing are going to have a quarterback need. Like there
Yes.
are so many playoff teams that are going to have a quarterback need and are going to be a part of this conversation. I think it's going to take us a little bit to know this. Also, the transfer portal, again, reminder, does not open until January 2nd. So we will have some clarity on if those teams are eliminated. I think we will hear very quickly those reports, even before it opens, that these guys are going there.
These deals are done.
I don't even know why we're even pretending at this point.
It's like the NFL free agency tampering, right? Like these deals are done.
Yes.
And I think like a team like Miami is a great example who probably knows who their quarterback is right now.
Yeah.
Right? Lane's not waiting. It's the most interesting one because I think it creates a little bit of a domino effect of which guy is it going to be? Is it going to be Levitt? Is it going to be Chambliss? Is it going to be Lagway? And I think ultimately,
So many options.
And I think it will start there because if you're one of these players, you're going to get paid $4 to $5 million pretty much at all schools. You
Yes.
probably want to play with Lane Kiffin given the talent. I think you made this point last show or pod we did. Like, it's not just going to be the quarterback. There's going to be an infusion of skill talent that comes in there as well.
Yeah, I also do want to point out that the TCU quarterback Hoover, who is now in the transfer portal, turned down Tennessee last offseason to come and play there. So curious where he will end up. And I mean, think in the SEC, in those programs that need a quarterback, or even in the Big Ten. Definitely think if you're leaving a place like the Big 12, you're going somewhere where you could be a part of the national championship conversation and college football playoff conversation, because obviously Texas Tech, a bit of a juggernaut at this point. But that is all we have for you guys today. We appreciate you hanging out. We love the chat as usual. Enjoy the good football games. We get to be lively and excited about them. No group of 6 teams in it, guys, so we can pay attention to those. But for Paige and Adam, we appreciate you guys, and we will talk to you all soon.